But as the flames spread, the forest fought back. Rain clouds gathered with unnatural speed, drenching the flames before they could take hold. Trees seemed to bend and shift, their branches striking out with the force of battering rams. The resistance fighters moved like phantoms, their knowledge of the terrain allowing them to strike and retreat before the Zevran could respond. They used the forest's defenses to their advantage, luring the enemy into traps that turned their own technology against them. Lena found herself at the heart of the chaos, her every step guided by an instinct she couldn't fully explain. It was as if the forest was speaking to her, its voice a whisper in the back of her mind. She led her team through the thick of the battle, their movements as fluid and unpredictable as the forest itself. By the time the sun set, the Zevran forces were in full retreat. Their once proud soldiers were reduced to a terrified rabble, their ranks decimated by an enemy they couldn't understand. Lena stood on a ridge overlooking the battlefield, her chest heaving as she took in the scene. The forest stretched out before her, its shadows deep and impenetrable. For the first time, she felt a sense of hope, not just for the resistance, but for humanity itself. Henry approached her, his expression unreadable. "The forest is pleased," he said. Lena nodded, her gaze fixed on the horizon. "We owe it everything," she said, "but this isn't over. They'll come back, and they'll be more desperate than ever." Henry's lips twitched into a faint smile. "Let them come," he said. "The forest has been here for centuries. It knows how to endure." In the days that followed, the resistance regrouped, their confidence bolstered by their victory. They began to see the forest not just as a battleground, but as a partner, a living entity that had chosen to fight alongside them. Lena, however, couldn't shake the feeling that the forest's involvement was more than just an act of self-preservation. It felt deliberate, as if the forest had a deeper purpose, one that extended beyond the war. Her suspicions were confirmed when she stumbled upon an ancient ruin hidden deep within the forest. The structure, covered in moss and vines, bore symbols that seemed to hum with energy. As she stepped inside, she felt a surge of recognition, as if she had been here before. Henry appeared behind her, his expression solemn. "This is where it began," he said. "What is this place?" Lena asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Henry placed a hand on the stone wall, his fingers tracing the symbols. "The heart of the forest," he said, "and I think the source of its power." The discovery changed everything. The resistance began to see the forest not just as a partner, but as a guardian, a force that had been protecting the land long before humanity's arrival. And as they fought alongside it, they began to understand that their survival wasn't just about winning the war. It was about preserving something ancient and irreplaceable. But the Zevran weren't finished. And as the resistance prepared for the final confrontation, Lena knew that the fate of the forest and humanity itself would depend on their ability to stand together against all odds. The days leading up to the final confrontation were filled with a tense anticipation. The resistance worked tirelessly, their movements a blur of activity as they fortified their positions and prepared for the Zevran's inevitable return. The forest, ever watchful, seemed to grow more alive with each passing day. Its trees whispered in the wind, its roots shifted beneath the soil, and its energy pulsed like a heartbeat. Lena spent hours in the ancient ruin, studying its symbols and trying to unravel its secrets. She couldn't shake the feeling that the answers they needed were hidden within its walls. Henry joined her often, his quiet presence a comfort as they pieced together fragments of a forgotten story. "This forest has seen more than we can imagine," Henry said one evening, his voice tinged with awe. "It's older than any of us, older than the Zevran. It's been waiting." "Waiting for what?" Lena asked, her brow furrowed. Henry hesitated, his gaze distant. "For someone to listen," he said finally. "For someone to understand." Lena didn't fully grasp what he meant, but she felt the truth of his words. The forest wasn't just alive, it was conscious, and it had chosen to fight alongside humanity for a reason. The Zevran returned in force, their desperation evident in the sheer scale of their assault. They brought heavier weaponry, advanced drones, and an army twice the size of their previous incursions. Korvek himself led the charge, his determination to crush the resistance burning brighter than ever. But the forest was ready. As the Zevran advanced, the resistance sprang their traps. Explosions rocked the battlefield as carefully placed charges detonated, sending trees crashing down onto the invaders. Vines lashed out like living serpents, their strength ripping apart armored vehicles. The ground itself seemed to rebel, swallowing Zevran soldiers into sudden sinkholes. Lena led the charge, her voice cutting through the chaos as she directed her fighters. She moved with a confidence that bordered on instinct, her connection to the forest guiding her steps. Henry was never far from her side, his knowledge of the terrain turning the tide in their favor time and time again. Korvek, watching from his command post, forest, grew increasingly frustrated. "Why won't they fall?" he snarled, his mandibles clicking in agitation. "Why does this cursed forest defy us?" Threx, standing at his side, shook his head. "Perhaps it is not the forest that defies us, Commander," he said. "Perhaps it is something greater." Korvac refused to entertain such thoughts. He ordered his troops to press forward, their weapons spewing fire and destruction. But no matter how hard they fought, the forest fought harder. It was as if the very land had risen to defend itself. The turning point came when Lena, guided by an unexplainable intuition, led a small team to the heart of the battlefield. Their mission was to disable the Zevran's command center, a heavily fortified structure that controlled their forces. As they approached, the forest seemed to open before them, creating a path that allowed them to move undetected. Lena felt a strange energy coursing through her, as if the forest itself was lending her its strength. The team infiltrated the command center with precision, their movements swift and silent. They planted charges at key points, their actions coordinated with an almost supernatural timing. But as they prepared to retreat, Korvac appeared, his towering form blocking their path. "You think you can defy the Zevran and live?" he snarled, his glowing eyes narrowing. Lena stepped forward, her weapon raised. "This isn't your planet," she said, her voice steady. "And it never will be." Korvac lunged at her, his strength and speed overwhelming. But before he could strike, the ground beneath him erupted. Roots burst from the soil, wrapping around his limbs and pulling him to the ground. He roared in fury, his struggles futile against the forest's grip. Lena and her team barely made it out before the charges detonated. The explosion sent a shockwave through the battlefield, crippling the Zevran forces and sending them into a panicked retreat. The resistance pursued them, their victory all but assured. By the time the sun rose, the Zevran were gone, their ships retreating into the sky. The dense canopy of the Yellen forest swallowed the sound of approaching footsteps, leaving only the rustle of leaves and the faint chirp of hidden insects. Underneath the cover of ancient trees, the air felt alive, charged with a sense of watchfulness that unnerved even the most seasoned soldiers. Lieutenant Korvac of the Zevran Expeditionary Force adjusted the sensors on his wrist device, his mandibles clicking in frustration. Their scans had shown this region to be devoid of significant threats, yet his unit had been ambushed twice in as many days. It defied logic. The humans lacked the technology to evade their equipment, and yet they seemed to vanish into the forest like ghosts. "Report, Sergeant Threx," Korvac barked, his voice sharp as he turned to his second-in-command. Threx's armor was scratched and smeared with mud, a stark contrast to its usual pristine state. "No sign of the hostiles, sir," he replied, his tone strained. "But I don't think it's just the humans we're fighting here." Korvac's eyes narrowed. "Explain yourself." Threx hesitated, glancing toward the shadowed underbrush as if it might come alive at any moment. "The way they move, sir. The traps. It's almost as if the forest itself is working against us." Korvac clicked his mandibles again, a sound that betrayed his irritation. Superstitions have no place in a Zevran officer. Focus on the mission. But even as he dismissed the sergeant's concerns, Korvac couldn't shake the feeling that something was deeply wrong. The forest felt alive in a way that went beyond the biological. It felt aware, as if it were observing, calculating. Miles away, hidden deep within a labyrinth of vines and roots, the human resistance planned their next move. Among them was Lena Torres, a former botanist turned guerrilla strategist. Her hands were calloused from weeks of laying traps and handling weapons, but her mind remained as sharp as ever. "We hit them hard yesterday," she said, her voice calm but commanding. "But they'll adapt. They always do. We need to keep them guessing." Around her, the small group of fighters nodded, their faces lined with exhaustion but alight with determination. They had been outnumbered and outgunned since the invasion began, but the forest was their sanctuary and their greatest weapon. Lena turned to an older man sitting by the fire, his weathered face illuminated by the flickering flames. "Henry, what's the forest saying?" Henry Morrow, a man whose connection to the wilderness bordered on mystical, closed his eyes and took a deep breath. "It's restless," he said finally. "It doesn't like them. It wants them gone." Lena nodded, her expression resolute. "Then let's give it what it wants." The resistance fighters moved like shadows, their knowledge of the forest allowing them to strike and vanish before the aliens could react. They used the terrain to their advantage, setting traps that turned the Zevran's superior technology into a liability. Pitfalls, collapsing trees, and poison spikes became the tools of their trade, each ambush a carefully orchestrated symphony of chaos. But it wasn't just human ingenuity at play. The forest itself seemed to intervene, its roots tangling around alien equipment, its vines ensnaring unwary soldiers. The Zevran began to whisper of a curse, their confidence eroded by the unseen force that seemed to align itself with their enemies. enemies. Korvek, ever the pragmatist, dismissed such talk as weakness. Yet even he couldn't deny the pattern emerging. Their attempts to burn the forest met with sudden downpours that extinguished the flames. Their drones malfunctioned inexplicably, their signals scrambled by some unseen interference. It was as if the forest was fighting back. Lena, meanwhile, began to suspect that their success was more than just luck. She had always felt a connection to the natural world, but in the Yellen forest, that connection was amplified. She started to notice subtle signs, the way the wind seemed to guide her steps, the way the trees seemed to whisper their secrets. It was as if the forest was alive, and it had chosen a side. The turning point came during a nighttime assault on a Zevran outpost. The resistance had planned the attack meticulously, using the cover of darkness to their advantage. But as they approached, Lena felt a strange energy in the air, a pulsing vibration that seemed to resonate with the very fabric of the forest. The ambush was swift and brutal. The resistance struck with precision, their attacks coordinated with an almost supernatural timing. And then, as the Zevran scrambled to regroup, the forest itself seemed to come alive. Roots burst from the ground, ensnaring soldiers and ripping apart their machines. Vines lashed out like living whips, their strength tearing through armor as if it were paper. The resistance fighters could only watch in awe as the forest took its vengeance. By the time the sun rose, the outpost was abandoned, its structures reclaimed by the wilderness. Lena stood among the ruins, her heart pounding as she took in the scene. She didn't know how or why the forest had chosen to help them, but she knew one thing for certain: they weren't fighting alone. Word of the forest's vengeance spread quickly, not just among the resistance but also within the ranks of the Zevran. The once confident invaders began to hesitate, their movements slowed by an unease they couldn't fully articulate. Rumors of a sentient forest reached Korvek's ears, and though he dismissed them as baseless, he couldn't deny the patterns emerging in their reports. "Commander," Threx said during a tense strategy meeting, his voice low, "we've lost 3 units this week. Every time, the humans strike with precision, and the forest finishes the job. If we don't adapt, we'll be wiped out." Korvek's mandibles twitched as he stared at the holographic map before him. The forest dominated the terrain, its sprawling expanse a labyrinth of danger. "Then we will adapt," he said coldly. "Deploy the incendiary units. We'll burn this cursed place to the ground." Threx hesitated. "Sir, the last attempt was sabotaged," Korvek interrupted. "This time we'll ensure success. And if the forest truly is sentient, we'll show it the folly of defying the Zevran." Meanwhile, Lena and her team prepared for the inevitable retaliation. They had seen the Zevran adapt before, and they knew the invaders would escalate their efforts. But they also knew the forest was their ally, and they had no intention of abandoning it. As the resistance fighters gathered in a hidden clearing, Henry approached Lena, his expression grave. "The forest is angry," he said. "It knows what they're planning." Lena frowned. "Burning it," she guessed. Henry nodded. "It won't let that happen, but it's going to need our help." The next few days were a blur of activity as the resistance laid traps and prepared for the Zevran's assault. They worked alongside the forest, their efforts guided by Henry's uncanny intuition. Roots shifted to create barriers, vines grew into intricate snares, and hidden pathways opened to provide escape routes. When the Zevran finally launched their attack, the forest was ready. The battle that followed was like nothing Lena had ever seen. The Zevran unleashed their incendiary units, their weapons spewing streams of liquid fire that clung to everything it touched. The forest, battered but unbroken, stood as a testament to the power of unity and resilience. Lena stood among the ruins of the battlefield, her heart heavy with exhaustion and relief. Henry approached her, his expression a mix of pride and sadness. "It's over," he said. Lena nodded, her gaze fixed on the horizon. "For now," she said, "but the forest will need us, and we'll need it." In the weeks that followed, the resistance worked to heal the land, their efforts guided by the forest itself. They planted new trees, repaired the damage caused by the war, and pledged to protect the ancient guardian that had saved them. Lena, now seen as a leader not just of the resistance but of a new alliance between humanity and the natural world, vowed to honor the forest's gift. She spent her days tending to its needs, her connection to it growing stronger with each passing moment. And though the scars of the war would remain, the forest stood as a living reminder of what could be achieved when courage and unity prevailed. Because in the end, the forest hadn't just fought for them, it had fought with them. And that was a bond that no invader could ever break. The aftermath of the Zevran retreat marked the beginning of a new chapter for humanity and the forest. The victory had come at a great cost, but it had also forged a bond that would define the future of Earth. The forest, once seen as merely a backdrop to human lives, was now recognized as a partner, a protector, and a teacher. Lena became a central figure in the efforts to rebuild, her leadership guiding the creation of a network of sanctuaries that integrated human settlements with the natural world. These sanctuaries, built in harmony with the forest, became places of healing and learning, where people came to understand the importance of coexistence. One day, as Lena walked through one of these sanctuaries, she was approached by a group of children. Their faces were bright with curiosity, their laughter filling the air. "Is it true?" one of them asked. "Did the forest really fight the aliens?" Lena knelt down to their level, her smile warm. "It's true," she said, "but it didn't do it alone. We fought together because we believed in each other, and that's what made the difference." The children listened intently, their eyes wide as she described the battles and the courage of those who had stood alongside her. For Lena, these moments were as important as the battles themselves, reminders of why they had fought and what they had gained. The forest, too, seemed to thrive in the years that followed. Its roots spread deeper, its canopy grew taller, and its energy pulsed with a vitality that was felt by all who walked beneath its shade. It became a symbol of resilience and hope, its presence a constant reminder of the strength that came from unity. Henry, now seen as a sage among the people, spent his days teaching others about the forest's ways. He shared stories of its history, its mysteries, and its role in the survival of humanity. His connection to the forest deepened, and he became a bridge between the natural and human worlds. But the story didn't end there. The forest's victory over the Zevran had drawn attention from beyond Earth. Other planets, hearing of the alliance between humanity and the forest, began to reach out. Diplomats and scholars arrived, eager to learn about the bond that had turned the tide of the war. Among them was Orav, an alien scholar who had heard tales of the sentient forest and its role in the resistance. When he met Lena, he was struck by her humility and her reverence for the forest. "Your story is unlike anything I've encountered," Orav said, his voice filled with wonder. "The idea of a living forest choosing to fight alongside its inhabitants. It's extraordinary." Lena smiled, her gaze distant. "It chose us because we listened," she said, "because we stood for something greater than ourselves." Orav nodded, his expression thoughtful. "There are worlds out there that could learn from your example," he said. "Perhaps this is just the beginning of what your forest can teach us." The years turned to decades, and Earth's alliance with the forest became a cornerstone of its identity. The sanctuaries flourished, their designs inspiring similar efforts on other planets. The lessons of the forest, cooperation, balance, and resilience spread across the stars, shaping the way civilizations approached their relationships with their environments. Lena, now older but no less driven, continued to serve as a steward of the forest. She spent her days among its trees, her connection to it stronger than ever. And though the battles were long over, she knew that the forest's gift was something to be protected and nurtured for generations to come. One evening, as the sun set over the canopy, Lena stood on a ridge overlooking the sanctuaries. The air was filled with the sounds of life, birds calling, leaves rustling, and the distant laughter of children. She closed her eyes and took a deep breath, her heart full of gratitude. Henry joined her, his steps slow but steady. "The forest is at peace," he said, his voice quiet. Lena nodded. "So are we," she said. For the first time in a long time, as the stars began to appear in the sky, their light shimmering through the leaves, Lena felt a profound sense of connection to the forest, to the people it had saved, and to the future they were building together. Because in the end, the forest hadn't just fought for them, it had shown them a new way to live. And that, Lena knew, was the greatest victory of all. The alliance between humanity and the forest, celebrated across the galaxy, brought with it new challenges. As diplomats and scholars arrived to study the forest, the question of how to protect its unique nature became a pressing concern. While some visitors sought to learn and preserve, others saw an opportunity for exploitation. One such visitor was Darvek, an influential trader from the Andrus sector. His entourage arrived with promises of mutual benefit, their sleek ships brimming with technology that could revolutionize Earth's infrastructure. But Lena and Henry sensed something amiss. "He's not here to help," Henry said one evening as they watched Darvek address a gathering in one of the sanctuaries. "He sees the forest as a resource, not as an ally." Lena nodded, her expression grim. "We've fought to protect this place before," she said. "We'll do it again if we have to." Darvek's intentions became clear when his team attempted to harvest samples from the ancient ruin at the heart of the forest. The act triggered a response unlike anything the resistance had witnessed. The forest's energy surged, its roots and vines lashing out to repel the intruders. Darvek's team retreated in panic, their equipment destroyed. "The forest remembers," Henry said as he and Lena stood near the ruin, watching the aftermath of the forest's defense. "It knows the difference between those who come in peace and those who come to take." Darvek, undeterred, began to spread rumors that the forest's power was a threat to the galaxy. galaxy. He argued that its sentience made it unpredictable and dangerous, and he lobbied the Interstellar Concord to intervene. Lena traveled to the stellar nexus to counter his claims. Standing before the Concord's council, she spoke with the same passion and determination that had guided her during the resistance. "The forest is not a threat," she said, her voice steady. "It's a guardian, a protector of life. It fought alongside us because we stood for something greater than ourselves. To destroy it would be to destroy a part of what makes us who we are." Her words resonated deeply, and the Concord voted to designate the forest as a protected entity. Darvek's influence waned, and his efforts to exploit the forest were thwarted. But the incident served as a reminder of the delicate balance that had to be maintained. Back on Earth, Lena worked with the Concord to establish guidelines for visiting the forest. Only those who demonstrated a genuine commitment to learning and preserving its ways were granted access. The sanctuaries became centers of education and collaboration, attracting scientists, artists, and thinkers from across the galaxy. As the years passed, Lena's role as a steward of the forest evolved. She became a mentor to a new generation of leaders, sharing the lessons she had learned and ensuring that the forest's legacy would endure. Among her protégés was a young woman named Alara, whose connection to the forest mirrored Lena's own. "The forest chose you," Lena said to Alara one evening as they walked beneath the canopy. "Just as it chose me. It sees something in you, a strength, a compassion. Never forget that." Alara nodded, her eyes shining with determination. "I won't let it down," she said. "I'll protect it no matter what." The bond between humanity and the forest deepened, its influence extending far beyond Earth. The lessons of coexistence and respect shaped the way civilizations approached their relationships with their environments. And though challenges remained, the spirit of unity that had emerged from the resistance endured. In her later years, Lena returned to the ancient ruin, her steps slow but purposeful. She placed her hand on the moss-covered stone, feeling the hum of energy beneath her fingertips. The forest's heartbeat, steady and strong, filled her with a sense of peace. "We've come a long way," she said softly, her voice carrying through the stillness. "But there's still so much more to do." Henry, now an elder revered by all who knew him, stood beside her. "The forest will guide them," he said, "just as it guided us." As the sun set over the horizon, casting the forest in a golden glow, Lena felt a profound sense of gratitude. The battles they had fought, the sacrifices they had made, and the connections they had forged had led them to this moment, a moment of harmony and hope. And as the stars appeared in the sky, their light shimmering through the leaves, Lena knew that the story of the forest and humanity was far from over. It was a story of resilience, of courage, and of the enduring bond between life and the land that sustains it. Because in the end, the forest hadn't just fought for them, it had taught them how to fight for each other. And that, Lena knew, was a lesson worth sharing with the stars. Generations passed, and the legacy of the forest became woven into the fabric of human culture. Stories of the resistance, of Lena and Henry, and of the forest's sentient power were passed down through songs, paintings, and holographic sculptures. The sanctuaries flourished, becoming hubs of innovation where the line between technology and nature blurred. Alara, now a respected leader, took the teachings of the forest to new heights. Under her guidance, humanity developed biotechnologies inspired by the forest's symbiotic systems. Cities grew in harmony with the land, their architecture blending seamlessly with the natural world. Disease-resistant crops, energy-efficient designs, and climate-restorative practices transformed Earth into a beacon of sustainability. The Interstellar Concord frequently cited Earth as an example of what could be achieved when civilizations worked with their environments rather than against them. Ambassadors from countless worlds traveled to the sanctuaries, seeking to learn and implement similar practices on their own planets. But the galaxy was not without its shadows. Whispers of a new threat, a coalition of rogue factions seeking to exploit the resources of unprotected worlds, reached the ears of Alara and her council. The question arose, could the lessons of the forest prepare them for a conflict of this scale? Alara sought counsel in the heart of the forest, walking among its ancient trees as Lena once had. The forest's energy resonated within her, filling her with a sense of calm and clarity. As she stood before the ancient ruin, now a protected site revered by all who visited, she felt the presence of something greater than herself. "We will not fight as they do," she said aloud, her voice steady. "We will fight as the forest taught us, with wisdom, patience, and unity." The rogue coalition underestimated Earth, seeing it as a world too tied to its ideals to pose a significant challenge. But they quickly learned that the forest's lessons had prepared humanity for more than just survival. It had taught them to see strength in adaptability, to find allies in unexpected places, and to wield knowledge as their greatest weapon. When the conflict ended, ended, it was not with a decisive battle, but with a series of coordinated efforts that dismantled the coalition's power. Diplomacy, strategy, and the resilience of Earth's allies ensured a victory that was as much about preservation as it was about protection. In the years that followed, the galaxy entered a period of unprecedented collaboration. The sanctuaries became centers of interstellar dialogue, where species from across the stars worked together to address the challenges facing their worlds. And at the heart of it all was the forest, its wisdom a guiding force that transcended borders and species. Lena's name became legend, her story taught in schools and celebrated in festivals. Henry's teachings were compiled into a volume known as The Forest Chronicles, its pages filled with wisdom gleaned from his years of communion with the land. And Alara's leadership ensured that the lessons of the past were never forgotten. One day, as Alara walked through a sanctuary with her young daughter, she paused beneath a towering tree whose leaves glimmered with a soft, golden light. The tree was known as the Guardian's Watch, its seeds said to have been blessed by the forest itself. Her daughter, wide-eyed and curious, looked up at her. "Will the forest always be here, Mama?" she asked. Alara knelt beside her, placing a hand on the tree's trunk. "As long as we protect it," she said, "and as long as we remember what it taught us." The girl nodded, her small hand reaching out to touch the bark. "Then I'll protect it too," she said. Alara smiled, her heart full of hope. "I know you will," she said, "because the forest is part of who we are. And as long as we stand together, nothing can take that away." As the sun set over the sanctuary, casting the forest in a warm, golden glow, Alara felt a profound sense of connection. The lessons of the past, the struggles and sacrifices of those who had come before her, had led to this moment, a moment of unity, peace, and promise. And as the stars appeared in the sky, their light shimmering through the leaves, the forest's presence seemed to whisper, "In unity, there is strength. In courage, there is hope. And in hope, there is a future worth protecting." Because in the end, the forest wasn't just a place. It was a symbol of what could be achieved when life worked together, when challenges were faced with resilience, and when the lessons of the past were carried forward into the future. And that, Alara knew, was a story worth sharing with the stars. The passage of time turned the story of the forest into a cornerstone of galactic culture. Scholars wrote treatises on the unique bond between Earth and its guardian. Artists depicted its beauty in works that traveled across the stars, and leaders cited its wisdom in times of crisis. The forest was no longer just a protector of Earth. It had become a symbol of what could be achieved when life embraced coexistence. But with recognition came responsibility. Alara and her council worked tirelessly to ensure that the sanctuaries remained true to their purpose. They created partnerships with other worlds, sharing the forest's lessons while respecting its boundaries. This balance between outreach and preservation became the foundation of their work. One of the most transformative projects of this era was the Star-Woven Network, a system of interstellar pathways inspired by the forest's interconnected roots. Designed to facilitate communication and collaboration between worlds, the network became a living embodiment of the forest's teachings. Its creation was a monumental effort involving the combined expertise of dozens of civilizations. Lena's legacy was honored in the central node of the network, a station named Lena's Promise. Its design echoed the canopy of the forest, with flowing structures that seemed to grow organically from the core. Visitors from across the galaxy gathered there, marveling at its beauty and learning about the resistance that had inspired it. For Alara, the Star-Woven Network was a dream realized. Standing in the heart of Lena's Promise, she addressed a gathering of diplomats, scientists, and leaders. "This network is not just a tool," she said, her voice resonant. "It is a reminder of who we are and what we can achieve when we work together. It is a testament to the courage of those who fought for a better future and to the wisdom of the forest that guided them." Her words carried across the chamber, drawing applause and nods of agreement. But even as the network flourished, challenges remained. Whispers of a new conflict began to emerge, this time from a faction that rejected the Concord's ideals of unity. They believed in dominance and control, and they saw the forest as a threat to their vision of the galaxy. Their attacks were subtle at first, sabotaging communication relays, spreading propaganda, but they grew bolder over time. Alara, recognizing the danger, turned to the forest for guidance. Returning to the ancient ruin, she placed her hands on its stone surface and closed her eyes. The forest's energy surrounded her, filling her with a sense of calm and clarity. "We've faced this before," she said softly. "We'll face it again. Together." The conflict that followed tested the strength of the Star-Woven Network and the unity it represented. But the lessons of the forest proved invaluable. Diplomacy, collaboration, and resilience turned the tide, and the faction's power waned. The galaxy emerged from the conflict stronger, its people more committed to the ideals of coexistence coexistence and respect. In her later years, Alara reflected on the journey that had brought her to this point. Sitting beneath the Guardian's watch with her daughter, now a young leader in her own right, she spoke of the forest and its enduring legacy. "The forest taught us how to stand together," she said. "It showed us that strength comes from unity, and that courage is found in the choices we make every day." Her daughter nodded, her eyes shining with determination. "I'll carry that forward," she said. "I'll make sure the forest story is never forgotten." As the sun set over the sanctuary, casting the forest in a warm, golden glow, Alara felt a profound sense of peace. The battles they had fought, the challenges they had overcome, and the connections they had forged had led them to this moment, a moment of harmony, hope, and promise. And as the stars appeared in the sky, their light shimmering through the leaves, the forest's presence seemed to whisper, "In unity, there is strength. In courage, there is hope. And in hope, there is a future worth protecting." Because in the end, the forest wasn't just a place. It was a symbol of what could be achieved when life worked together, when challenges were faced with resilience, and when the lessons of the past were carried forward into the future. And that, Alara knew, was a story worth sharing with the stars. As the centuries passed, the story of the forest and its guardians became an integral part of galactic history. Schools taught the tale of Lena, Alara, and the resistance as a lesson in courage, unity, and the power of working with nature. Holographic reenactments brought the battles to life, allowing new generations to experience the trials and triumphs that had shaped their world. But the forest itself remained the heart of the story. Its ancient roots continued to spread, connecting the sanctuaries and the star-woven network in ways that even the most advanced scientists struggled to comprehend. The forest's energy was no longer a mystery. It was a living force that resonated with all who encountered it. Alara's daughter, Lyra, emerged as a leader in her own right, her vision shaped by the legacy of those who had come before her. She saw the forest not just as a guardian of Earth, but as a symbol of what the galaxy could become. "The forest is more than trees and roots," Lyra said during a speech at the Stellar Nexus. "It's a reminder that strength comes from connection, that the greatest challenges can be overcome when we stand together, and that the past is not something to leave behind, but something to carry forward." Under Lyra's leadership, the Concord initiated a project to create similar sanctuaries on other planets. These sanctuaries, inspired by Earth's forest, became places of healing and restoration, helping to reverse the damage caused by centuries of exploitation. The project was named Lena's Legacy, a tribute to the woman whose courage had sparked a revolution. Back on Earth, the forest continued to thrive, its presence a constant source of inspiration. Visitors from across the galaxy came to walk its paths, their lives forever changed by the experience. Many described a sense of clarity, as if the forest itself was speaking to them. One such visitor was Kale, a young scholar from a distant world scarred by war. He came to the forest seeking answers, his heart heavy with the weight of his people's struggles. As he walked beneath the canopy, he felt a sense of peace that he had never known. Sitting beneath the Guardian's watch, Kale closed his eyes and let the forest's energy wash over him. For the first time, he felt hope, not just for his people, but for the galaxy. "The forest shows us what we can be," he wrote in his journal. "It is not just a place, but a promise. Promise that we can heal, that we can grow, that we can find our way back to each other." Kale's writings became a beacon for those seeking a path forward, his words resonating with all who read them. His journey to the forest, like so many others, became a part of its enduring legacy. And though the challenges of the galaxy continued, the lessons of the forest provided a foundation for resilience and hope. The sanctuaries flourished, the star-woven network expanded, and the spirit of unity that had emerged from the resistance remained strong. In the quiet moments, as the stars shone brightly over the sanctuaries, the forest stood as a silent witness to it all. Its roots, deep and unyielding, carried the memory of the past. Its branches, reaching toward the heavens, held the promise of the future. And as the galaxy moved forward, the forest's presence remained a constant, a reminder that even in the face of the greatest challenges, courage, unity, and hope could light the way. Because in the end, the forest wasn't just a guardian of Earth. It was a guardian of the spirit of life, of connection, and of the boundless potential that lay within every living being. And that, Lyra knew, was a legacy worth protecting. As Lyra walked through the forest one evening, the golden light of the setting sun filtering through the leaves, she felt a profound sense of connection. The paths she walked were the same ones her ancestors had tread, their footsteps etched into the memory of the forest. The whispers of the wind carried their voices, their lessons, their courage. She paused by the Guardian's watch, her hand resting on the smooth bark of the ancient tree. It was said that the tree's roots reached the heart of the forest, connecting it to the ancient ruin that had guided humanity through its darkest hours. For Lyra, it was more than a symbol, it was a promise. "You've carried us this far," she said softly, her voice barely more than a whisper, "and we'll carry your story to the stars." The forest responded with a gentle breeze, its branches swaying as if in agreement. Lyra closed her eyes, letting the moment wash over her. She thought of Lena, of Alara, of Henry, and of all those who had stood against the odds to protect what they believed in. In the years that followed, the lessons of the forest continued to shape the galaxy. The sanctuaries grew into thriving communities where life and technology coexisted in harmony. The star-woven network expanded to include even the most distant worlds, its pathways a testament to the strength of unity. And through it all, the forest remained. Its roots, deep and enduring, carried the memory of those who had come before. Its branches, reaching toward the heavens, held the promise of a future defined not by fear, but by hope. Visitors from across the galaxy came to the forest, seeking its wisdom and its peace. Among them were young leaders, curious children, and weary travelers searching for meaning. They found solace beneath its canopy, their lives forever changed by the experience. One such visitor, a poet from a distant star system, wrote of the forest in words that resonated across the stars. "Beneath its boughs, I found my soul, in roots that whispered, in leaves that told, a story of courage, of life reborn, of hope that shines through every storm." The poem became a cornerstone of galactic culture, its verses recited at gatherings and inscribed on monuments. It was a reminder that even in the darkest times, there was light to be found, a light that could guide, heal, and inspire. And as the galaxy continued to evolve, the forest's story endured. It was a story of resilience, of unity, and of the boundless potential of life. It was a story that transcended borders, species, and time, a story that belonged to everyone. For Lyra, and for all who carried the forest's lessons forward, it was more than a legacy. It was a way of life, a way of seeing the world, of standing for what was right, and of believing in the power of connection. And as the stars shone brightly in the night sky, their light dancing through the leaves, the forest seemed to whisper a timeless truth. In unity, there is strength. In courage, there is hope. And in hope, there is a future worth fighting for, because in the end, the forest wasn't just a part of the galaxy. It was the heart of it, a heart that beat with the rhythm of life, carrying its lessons, its wisdom, and its promise into the endless expanse of the stars.